The opinions and viewpoints expressed in .NET Rocks are not necessarily those of its sponsors, or of Microsoft Corporation, its partners, or employees. .NET Rocks is a production of Franklin's Net, which is solely responsible for its content. Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter. Rockheads, turn off the Whirlwind Visible bands, turn on the false color bands, and listen up. It's time for another stellar episode of .NET Rocks, the internet audio talk show for .NET developers with Carl Franklin and Richard Campbell. This is Geoff Maciolik, here to announce show number 102 with guests Chris Maxwell and Randy Kim, recorded live Friday, February 25th, 2005. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter, and now offering hands-on VBNet, ASP.NET, and C# classes online at www.franklins.net. And by Telerik RAD Controls, the UI essentials for rapid ASP.NET development, online at www.telerik.com. Support is also provided by Code Magazine, the leading independent magazine for .NET developers, online at www.code-magazine.com. And now, the man who was once told by a French waiter, "No, you cannot park the space shuttle at the Eiffel Tower," Carl Franklin.
A callback to the .NET Rocks movie of 2004.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty good. The original joke was, "No, you cannot put the ketchup on the chicken." And then, of course, it morphed from there into many things. Well, anyway, I'm Carl Franklin from New London, Connecticut, tonight live, .NET Rocks. Show number 102, as Geoff said. My co-host, Richard Campbell, out there in Vancouver, British Columbia. How are you, Richard?
Everything's good, man. Weather's beautiful out here. Wish you were here.
Yeah, I know. I was just looking at the weather in Vancouver on Whirlwind, which is like having your own personal little weather station. It's pretty amazing.
Or your own satellite.
We're going to talk about that with Chris Maxwell and Randy Kim from NASA. But before I do that, I want to ask you, what's on your mind these days? You know, this is your chance to address the world, man.
Well, I was looking at my schedule, just looking at what's coming up in the week, and one of the things I completely forgot about, I'm going to have to work on this weekend, is I'm doing a presentation to a group of schools on internet safety.
Oh, cool.
We're getting parents and kids together, and I'm just sort of talking through some of the issues about what technology they want with their machines. I want everybody to get a NAT router.
Yeah,
and antivirus software and anti-spyware, all of that good stuff. And then I want to talk about the best ways to use instant messaging and what to do with your email.
Wow,
and all those sorts of things that I think parents often struggle with because they're not technical people, and that their kids are often doing, and they just need to have some picture of what's going on in there.
What a great idea!
Yeah, the Microsoft Canada guys love the whole concept, and then I think the big spin on that was really talking about how to use the tool, how to limit it appropriately with children. One of the things about a NAT router you can do is you can block individual websites.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to protect you from the ugliness on the internet, but it will give you a method as a parent to say, look, I'm going to let you be online, but you can't hang out on Neopets until you finish your homework.
Right. That's true. That's cool. So, we heard from Kirk Webb, who used to be on .NET Rocks, of course, with the Weird Wide Web, then moved to Mondays, then got busy, got a job. And he is apparently so busy with his company, Environmental Data Resources, that he's looking to hire a programmer. So he put up, sort of a local website, notice, and nobody has been biting. So I said I'd mention it on the show. So if you're in the Milford, Connecticut area and you're looking for a full-time developer position, contact him at employment@edrnet.com. And here's what he wants. 2 to 3 years of professional experience, solid design and development experience using VB6, VBNet, ASP.NET, and SQL Server stored procs, relevant college degree required, solid communication skills, written and verbal, no relocation or sponsorship for this position. And again, the email is employment@edrnet.com. So I thought I'd give him a shout out. And I know that people are looking for work out there. That's a good thing. Also got some great email this week, Richard. This one from Ike Ellis, which, we get a lot of emails from people who like the show, but this one was really interesting.
Cool.
He says, "Hi, Carl. I wanted to drop you a quick note to tell you how much I love your show. I'm a developer/executive, and your show is an essential tool that I use to make strategic business decisions for 3 separate companies."
Wow.
So we're like now helping people make strategic business decisions.
Oh, dear. That's kind of scary.
As if there wasn't enough pressure on us.
So if you make a bad decision, is it our fault?
It was those .NET Rocks guys, man. They told me this was the technology to use.
Well, anyway, I'm pretty confident that all the stuff that you hear on .NET Rocks is pretty sound. I think it's great that you developed Mondays to do the other stuff. Though entertaining wasn't as useful to my day-to-day responsibilities, we agree.
Yeah,
also,
focused.
Yep, absolutely. That's why we did it. Also, if you could keep your shows under 75 minutes, it would help me a great deal. I only have a CD player in my car, and I need to burn your show to a CD so I can listen to it. So remind me to tell the guys from NASA that if we go over 75 minutes, that we're going to have to tell them to shut up. So,
yeah, that's why we have those Part A, Part B downloads.
Yeah,
on the
I
site.
actually told him about that. He didn't realize that because he had been downloading from Microsoft's website.
Oh, yeah.
Right. They only have the full thing.
That's right. They only have the full thing. So once he came to our site, he went, "Eureka! Thank you very much."
Sweet.
And because
you're not the only one listening to the show in your car.
Yep. That's why we did it. We split up the shows early on, actually, for that reason.
For those people that aren't cool enough to have MP3 players or MP3 CD players in their car. Ooh.
So Rob Windsor, who's our friend from Toronto, the Toronto Visual Basic user group.
And a regular in the chat room.
Yeah, and a regular in the chat room. And he's the co-founder and president and webmaster of that user group. He says, "Hey, Carl, I would like to officially apply to be the co-host for shows 700 to 750.
Ooh.
By that time, I figure my only competition will be Anson Williams and people whose code is featured on the daily WTF. And I'm sure I can kick their asses."
What is that, 15 years from now?
Yeah. By the way, I may be the lifetime leader in getting letters read on the air. I think I'm at 4, yet I'm still without any freaking useless crap. Carl, please write up a total suck-up letter and send it to me so I can send it back to you and get a mug or a hoodie. Rob, I'm sorry, man.
We got to send Rob a mug.
We'll send him a hoodie.
No, send him a pen.
Send him a guitar.
Yeah, maybe just a little button that says "I love Carl."
A guitar pick.
By the time this guy's the co-host, we'll have moved from, because we had .com, now we have .net. We're going to have gone through .org when Microsoft goes open source, .info when they become, just an information, technology company not releasing software, and we'll go all the way up through .ws, and he'll be the host of .cx rocks.
Well, anyway, this one from Scott Fry. Hey, Carl and Richard. Carl, it was good to meet you at the mini code camp. I was the one that offered you the rolled-up keyboard when you thought yours failed. Yeah, my keyboard kind of went wacky on me, although I found out it was software. It was Visual Studio.
Oh, sweet.
I'm only partway through episode 100 with only a half-hour drive to work each day, and because I listen to Mondays, .NET Rocks, and everything from IT Conversations, I'm always about a week behind. Sad to hear that Rory is gone. He definitely brought a unique flavor to the show. And then I have an XML attribute, standard_praise. I have been listening to the show for a long time, but I'm sure that Richard will be just as great. I think there's some text missing there, but I don't know. I think he has some of the funniest one-liners that often slip in when no one notices. Okay, here we go. I've been listening to your show for about a year now, but I started at show 1 and listened to every episode. I feel like I know you guys, and I have to say this show is totally awesome. I've been programming for 20 years, C and C++, and in VB for the last 5 years. And I have to say your show is the best thing to happen to programmers since we got off those silly punch cards. He says some good stuff about me being a good presenter. And then he says, anyway, on to my suggestion for which this entire email is about. While listening to your 100th show on the way home from work tonight, you mentioned we should send you show ideas. First, let Bill Gates speak on your show. I'm sure you've turned him down several times, but he is the guy that made VB possible, and I think you owe it to him to be on at least one show.
Yeah, I could probably concede to that.
And then he also talks about a lot more stuff about OOP, object programming in .NET, especially VB.NET.
Oh, really? Did you know? And it's funny, he's not even got to 101 and listened to Mark's discussions on that.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm, I guess I won't read that. So, it's basically what he says. These are the types of issues, and maybe your other listeners would like to see discussed on the air between people from different sides of the issue of, and he's specifically talking about containers or data sets here. This is an issue I face every day when coding. Keep up the great work. Scott Fry. P.S. If you read this on the air, feel free to use my real name and or email. All right.
Okay.
That's pretty much the mail. So
that's some nice mail.
Yeah, it's good. We don't always get readable mail. It's all good. We love it all. Don't get me wrong, but some of it's we've heard before, and we got to pick the ones that we think people would like to listen to. Well, anyway. So we've been spending the last 3 hours, you, me, and Geoff here, in our respective places, messing around with Whirlwind.
I love it.
And we are just amazed. And some of the guys in the chat room, too, we've been talking and just sort of grooving on this thing. So I'm going to let these guys from NASA talk to us about it. Chris Maxwell is a lead software developer for Whirlwind. And Randy Kim is a graphics and user interface expert, and they both work at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in Silicon Valley. Welcome, guys, Chris and Randy.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for inviting us to your show.
Oh, are you kidding? Thank you for coming on our crappy show. And you guys are like rock stars to us, Thanks.
It's absolutely an astonishing piece of software. It's fabulous.
It's amazing. Wow.
Fun to make it.
So for the totally uninitiated, why doesn't one of you tell us what this is?
Okay. Whirlwind is an educational piece of software that's designed to be a 3D visualization tool. So that's just a fancy word for saying that it's a 3D globe. And the idea is that I can go anywhere in the world, zoom up to any place, I could see it at any angle, and if necessary, I can switch to a different data set that's available out there. So I can see anything that satellites see, aerial photography, or many of the other different products that are published by NASA within this tool.
Yeah, and that is an understatement. This is sort of an extensible, pluggable viewer, right? And how many different views do you have built into the product?
I'd say maybe 8 or 10. The trouble with answering that question is that we're always hunting for different sources of data, and every time we find one, we kind of jump on it and try to find a way to squeeze it into Whirlwind.
Wow.
Yeah, there's, well, I have a question. Where's all this data coming from?
That's a good question.
Yeah, okay. The majority of this information, such as the Landsat satellite information that we see, or the MODIS information, they're all full of acronyms. The majority of it comes from the different centers located across NASA. Sometimes it can come from Goddard. Sometimes it can come from us. The other sources of data that we also grab is, for example, the USGS topographic information and black and white aerial photography. You can grab that. That comes from actually Microsoft Terra servers.
Interesting.
Really? The Terra server data?
Yeah, that's right. The information that comes off of there, we can borrow it because they're based on all these established standards, and it was almost no effort to actually bring it into Whirlwind.
Wow.
Fabulous.
So I take it a lot of this data you're pulling down with web services, and first of all, we should say this is a .NET application. That's why we're so fascinated by it, right?
Yeah.
And you got to tell us, C# or VB?
Okay, I'll let Chris answer this one. I can't hog all the attention.
It's definitely C#.
There you go.
I don't know any VB.
Awesome.
Are there any other developers besides you, Chris?
Well, I guess I'm the only full-time programmer behind this, but we do have we have another part-time programmer who spends a little bit of his time on this, and then now recently in the last few months we have quite a few developers from the open source community that have been contributing quite a lot of code to this development.
So this is an open source product or project?
Yeah. It's all open source, and we don't make any real reservations to it.
So back to the data question, Chris, or maybe Randy, I don't know. But you're utilizing web services a lot to pull the data. I mean, I know you're doing that with TerraServer, but other sources of data? Is the rest of the world as hip as to web services as Microsoft is?
Well, let's see. We use a standard called WMS, and that is entirely based off the concept of, I guess, web services, that we go ahead and pull the server, grab the data off of it, and import it into our application. Because a program like Whirlwind, even though it's kind of big right now, it's totally impossible to fit all of that information on the CD or DVD or even 100 DVDs.
Right.
We always have to go out and grab our information.
Right.
Yeah, how do you determine, like, what kind of, I noticed the download was in excess of, like 150 megs. How do you determine what's included in the application? Like, what makes up that 160 megs versus what you pull down over the network?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
The actual program itself is not that big, maybe around a megabyte or so. But we wanted to throw in a lot of default information, both for technical reasons and for something to get started off of.
Yeah.
So, for example, if the server wasn't available, you wouldn't see like a really fuzzy globe.
Right.
Like just the blue marble set, I imagine, is the kind of the minimum data.
Mm-hmm.
You want to outline and I one of the greatest features I love about this, and before we actually get into some of the programming stuff heavily, but I want to talk about the features of this product. It's great. One of the greatest features is this, and I guess it's MODIS, MODIS.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what does that stand for, and what exactly does that do?
Oh, good question. I should actually go run out and look that up at the moment. Give me a second.
Okay.
What the acronym is?
Yeah, we love acronyms in this place.
Yeah, you're hanging with the right crowd here. We're the king of acronyms too, but we can't remember any of them either.
I mean, Chris, do you realize like how godlike you are to our listeners? I mean, this is just insanely awesome.
Well, that makes me feel good because this is actually my first software project.
What? You got to be kidding me! Really?
Nice start.
Well, I graduated from San Jose State 2 years ago, and this was my first, I guess, real job, and then my first real programming job, at least.
Wow.
Well, your biggest problem is going to be topping this.
Oh, that's what my boss keeps telling me.
This is incredible.
Wow.
Now, you guys have obviously seen Keyhole, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So Keyhole is like this thing that you pay for, and they really only have like one or two sources of data, right?
Actually, they have a whole variety of different data sources. But what they've done, they combined it all together.
Yeah.
I've always thought it was very predominantly U.S.-oriented, Keyhole was.
Yeah.
Google bought them.
Really? I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah.
Google bought something. What else is new?
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I know.
It's just amazing being able to get a sense of the size of the Earth by zooming in at a constant speed, and seeing how long it takes to actually recognize something on the ground. It's really insane. God, I love this program.
You turn on the long lat indicator and you get the altitude meter and you know how high up you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, to put the Keyhole thing to rest. Yeah, Keyhole, it's, not to say anything bad about Keyhole. Their product is it is what it is. It's very nice. They have this thing that's geared towards corporations and stuff, but the level of flexibility it's orders of magnitude below what Whirlwind has, And the interface, I think, in Keyhole is a lot more cumbersome. But
the interface is simple.
I don't want to get on anyone's nerves out there, though.
The interface to Keyhole is simple, and it's really made to be a model of simplicity. But, and for that reason, there's so much stuff behind Whirlwind that I didn't get until I actually started playing around with it. Like with Keyhole, like all of the data just comes right in when you zoom in, and it's all like aerial photography. And so, if you don't turn on that feature in Whirlwind, you don't see it. But that's because there's a lot of other views also, and why pick just one? And then there's animations.
Yeah, that's something that I was playing around with earlier. Richard actually found this when he was messing around with the program. He went and looked at the South Pole and was under WMS under, oh geez, I'm gonna have a heck of a time finding this now.
It was in the cryosphere. It was the big iceberg sliding around.
Yeah, there's this phenomenal video of that giant iceberg in Antarctica that detached and has been wreaking havoc on the wildlife down there because they're having a harder time getting out to the ocean. And it's just amazing because once you play this animation, and I guess with a lot of the other layers too, you can adjust the opacity, and so you can actually see what everything looked like before and after, with and without this video on top. And it's just, and it overlays the date of everything, and it's just the amount of information just in this one layer is mind blowing, and the flexibility and everything. And Richard pointed out that when you start playing it downloads on the fly, and once it's got 2 frames, it plays the 2 frames, and it's got 3 frames, it plays the first 3 frames. There's no, it doesn't make you wait before you get, it's like almost instant gratification.
Yeah, this sounds like the feature that we have in Whirlwind called NASA SBS, which stands for Scientific Visualization Studio.
Yeah.
Right.
They're a group over in Goddard, and they specialize in actually developing these really cool videos that demonstrate all of this wonderful educational material. And a lot of what they develop is based on animations and different projections and so on. What we're able to do is, we can borrow their stuff and we can place it on Whirlwind, and then we can see it in the context of a globe.
Yes, that's the big difference here, is visualizing the whole thing. And I think you bring up you've mentioned this a couple of times, and I guess you want to talk about a distinction between Keyhole and Whirlwind. There is definitely an educational bent to Whirlwind.
Yeah.
Looking at stuff other than just cities.
Right, and trying to find my house on a map. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I think is totally cool, I'm watching this video, and for the first time I've actually zoomed, way, way out. I'm actually, I have the entire southern hemisphere visible on my screen now, and you get a sense of scale that would be impossible, literally impossible to present with any kind of normal video media. Even if you say, this is 15 kilometers long, this is 150 kilometers long, this is however many square kilometers or whatever, there's nothing that comes even close to being able to, use my mouse wheel, scroll in, look at this Long Island-sized piece of ice, and scroll out and say, oh, wow, there's Long Island. It really is Long Island-sized. Right. Or, this is how big the thing looks relative to all of Antarctica.
This MODIS thing, let's talk about that for a minute, because this is essentially linking up events, historical events, in all kinds of Earth-related, weather-related or what have you, historic events, and you can actually see them and watch them. The tsunami was pretty incredible. That sort of caught me by surprise. I was spinning around the globe, and I saw this white thing that looked like a hurricane, and in zooming in, I just accidentally right-clicked on it, and then I'm off. I have some more information on a web page somewhere. I just love that interface. That's great.
That's the MODIS project, I guess, is called the Moderate Resolution Imaging Spectroradiometer. It's actually a summary for a series of 2 different satellites called Terra and Aqua, and what they do, they revolve around the Earth every day. And what's neat about it is that they transmit more than just visual images of the Earth every single time. They can see in spectrums that we might not normally be able to see, such as the infrared spectrum and so on. Yeah. And what happens is that they archive all of this wonderful information on their site at Rapid Fire Modus. And what we've been able to do is write a wrapper to actually grab that information and place it within Whirlwind.
Wow.
When we were looking at Vancouver in close detail, and Geoff suggested flip to the false color bands. And suddenly there's a whole other set of data there. We could see the dredging in the rivers. It came out very clearly. I don't know how else you could ever see something like that.
Yeah, the spectrums that we're able to see or play around with the colors, it brings out different features out of the Earth, such as vegetation, or we can see the temperature and the altitude. We can see different things and consistencies throughout, depending on what we're looking at.
Okay, so can we start talking about the program? Because I've just got a couple of things to throw out there, and this is an open-ended question, but I want to know how you deal with large blobs of memory, garbage collection. I mean, are you using the standard dispose, finalize patterns, or do you have something else up your sleeve? Because obviously you're dealing with a lot of data coming and going very quickly.
Yeah. I guess there's kind of like two categories of memory, at least in terms of what Whirlwind uses. There's, I guess, the RAM for the system, and then there's the RAM on the graphics card.
Okay. And
in both in both categories, we use the dispose method kind of built into the framework.
So this is managed DirectX?
Yeah, managed DirectX.
So that's interesting. I had actually never thought about that before. When you're dealing with managed DirectX and you're doing 3D rendering like this, you actually have to take into account what textures you've loaded onto the memory on your video card and unloading that stuff and handling stuff like that.
Yeah, actually, you have to. I guess when you allocate your normal array of objects, just as in a normal application, generally you don't have to call finalize or dispose or anything like that on it. It just kind of automatically gets freed by the framework. But for the managed DirectX stuff, at least as far as textures are concerned, and you have to. I guess they get loaded onto the graphics card, and then you have to call dispose in order to get them off. Otherwise, they stay there.
Now, do you ever invoke the garbage collector collect method yourself, or do you just let the GC do its thing?
Yeah, I never explicitly call that.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, I don't see any kind of bonks with the GC sort of slowing down anything, although, I wouldn't know if it was the GC, but Richard, have you experienced any kind of, because I know that was an issue with the first framework, with
I've just never dealt with this kind of volume of data either.
True. No, I meant in using the program, you didn't notice any kind of stuttering.
Does it ever bonk hard?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't.
No, not really. Of course, the machine I'm running it on is a horsepower monster too, so it just loves this.
I'm running it like on a stupid little Dell Latitude notebook, and it's doing great.
Yeah, I'm using it on a machine that's using a chipset graphics, Intel chipset graphics. And aside from a couple of rendering errors when I'm really zoomed in at an extreme angle, that's Intel graphics chipsets. Not to say anything bad about Intel, but they're not designed to handle this kind of thing, and it just blows my mind. It's totally, it's responsive.
So I mean, anyone who says managed code isn't fast enough for graphics obviously never saw this.
Well, yeah, spin the globe, rotate it.
Yeah, turn on the momentum. Chris, is that you're doing the momentum thing?
Kind of my influence. That's actually kind of a. Wait, what version are you using, by the way?
I'm using the latest,
1.2.
which is 1.2.
Yeah, we're using 1.2, not the alpha.
So if you press F11 and you just give it a good spin, or you move it and you let go, it starts spinning by itself.
Oh yes, yeah. That would be, I guess, my code.
Cool.
In version 1.3 that we're releasing, if you actually go to the chat channel, you can download an alpha version. But there's going to be a new navigation camera system.
Really?
And it was developed by one of our other open source community guys, and it's just pretty amazing. And it kind of takes that motion momentum to the next level.
Wow!
And he kind of coined the term planet gravity.
Yeah, that's what it kind of is.
Yeah, basically, it's something it kind of extends upon what I've already put in there.
Sweet. Now this camera thing, are you talking like, I want to take a tour up the Mississippi River kind of stuff, or?
Well, what do you mean by just kind of?
Well, I mean, will you be able to like plot courses and do animations through, like if I wanted to say I wanted to have a view down the Lewis and Clark Trail or something like that at such and such altitude. Oh,
well, then that actually that kind of relates to another upcoming feature then, we're trying to implement a scripting ability where you can, I guess, record a path and then play along.
Wow, like a replay of a given trip?
Yes, and then the idea being that users will record what they did and then, or have some kind of preset, and then they can make that available for other users, and then those users can.
This is kind of early to ask something like this, but for that kind of scripting and I guess for most of your storage, are you going to be using standard formats like XML files and stuff like that, or are you developing your own stuff?
For stuff like that, it's all XML, but there's certain ways that we store some of the performance critical data, like place names, for example.
Yeah.
Those would not play well to XML just because they need to be loaded really quickly and then unloaded really quickly, and
it is like 4 to 5 million of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of data. I zoomed in on Washington, D.C. with all the place names turned on, and the whole screen turned yellow with all the names. Like, you can't read any of them. There's so many.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try that right now.
Yeah, I'm in Boston doing the same thing. What do you say about that? I mean,
wow.
How do you deal with all that data, all those names? You know, when you have two names right over each other, I guess you just have to zoom in deep enough, right, so that they separate?
Well, actually, some names are exactly on each other. So no matter how far you zoom in, they'll still be exactly on top of each other.
Yeah.
Ooh, fun.
And, that's one of the things that we have to go through and try to solve is what do you do when you have that kind of situation? Should you just kind of concatenate them together or kind of selectively push them apart?
Put them in a window with a little box around them where the corner is or something.
That's a problem Mark Miller could solve, I think.
Yeah, Mark Miller's great about that stuff.
Should talk to him about.
Set it all on fire.
He does things he does similar things where he's got arrows that point from locations nearby that are in where the words themselves or the thing that's itself is isolated from all the other things. But I don't know if that's going to work because then now you've got points and lines and stuff and. Anyway, we're not here to solve your problem.
Yeah,
we want to know.
One of the good things about this program is that it's really modular. So that if somebody wanted to do that, they can kind of keep it separate from everything else in the program, and it wouldn't be that hard to just try it out and see if it works.
Now, is that the kind of thing would you have to open up the code for that, or do you have a plug-in type system?
Well, we're trying to develop a plug-in type system. It's kind of like halfway there, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like right now you have to pretty much just go right into the code and do it. But being open source, and we're not very critical about who we give CVS access to. I mean, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, the whole thing's on SourceForge now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
How long has it been in the works?
Well, that's actually leads into another subject. I guess you can kind of say that Whirlwind is a derivative of a project that was started 3 years ago called Blue Marble Viewer, and that was written by a guy.
That sounds familiar. Yeah,
and that was a Linux native project. And very shortly after that was made, where pretty much it was just kind of looking straight down at the world, and it was only the Blue Marble data set. So there was no 3D terrain or anything downloading, nothing like that. But shortly after that came out, and that was kind of sponsored by my boss and his group back then. I wasn't a part of that. But shortly after that, they tried to port that to Windows because that's kind of our core audience. I mean, education. I mean,
It's everybody's core audience.
Yeah.
So I mean, nobody's got Linux. So they tried to port it to Windows, and there was a lot of problems with usability. There was a lot of bugs, and it just wasn't working out. So this other guy named Tom Gaskins, who's actually still works in our group, made the first version of Whirlwind, which was based on C#, .NET, and it used a wrapper for OpenGL.
Okay.
And again, that had a similar thing where it was just the Blue Marble data set, and you look straight down. That one actually had place names and borders. And about a few months after that started, I came on board, and I kind of took that project, and I tried to work with it, but I got to the point where, I wanted to throw in terrain, I wanted to throw in high resolution imagery, so I kind of just started to rewrite the entire engine using managed DirectX and C#. And well, I've been doing this for 2 years now, like almost 2 years. Yeah.
Wow.
And what made you pick .NET?
It was easy. Being fresh out of school, I didn't have that much experience with any one particular language.
Yeah, I thought, coming out of university, it would have been more open source oriented or more
Java, maybe.
Open source platform, Linux oriented.
Well, in my school, we did I started off with C, and then I was in school for 6 years, so I I started with C, and then we went to C++, and then at the end, they started infusing us with Java. So when I came out, I kind of had a mix of all different languages. I didn't really specialize in any particular one. And then with this project of being .NET, I tried looking at the code, what was already there, and it just, it felt easy to work with. So kind of made sense to use managed DirectX at the time because I was having problems with the C# wrapper to OpenGL, and I couldn't use some functions, and it was pretty hard to debug stuff.
Is that how you ended up in DirectX? Was just because OpenGL was such a pain?
It was kind of a pain, and it just didn't seem to fit right with the framework, .NET framework, and it also kind of made sense because all the games use DirectX these days.
Right.
So.
And this thing really is more like a game than anything else.
Oh yeah. This is I don't know. I could spend hours with this. I have spent hours with this. Actually.
Yes, we have already.
And I'm going to spend a few more hours before this night is over. But anyway, here's a question for you. What about security? I mean, are there any security issues with topographical data or aerial photography? Things blurred out over Washington, D.C., that kind of stuff?
Yeah, there is. Those are legitimate concerns, of course. However, all of the data that Worldwind has access to and that everyone can grab from and so on, all of that information is already publicly accessible in different formats and so on. So there are actually no concerns whatsoever with that potential problem, I guess.
Cool. So you're not a believer in security through obscurity?
No, not quite with this tool. I can take that as a philosophy behind it. But if there were any concerns, it's already been taken care of.
Sure.
Yeah, the data wouldn't be unclassified in the first place, I presume.
I mean, come on, it's not rocket science.
It's my friend Carl. He has a funny one every so often.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe the questions I fielded from the chat room that I'm not going to ask you, about, because people assume that anyone from NASA is like an expert on the universe, so.
Yeah, lots of astrobiology questions.
Or even, stuff like, did we really go to the moon,
Yeah, do you guys know if we really went to the moon? Come on, I want to hear. Jeez.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch that.
No.
Doing web forms development should definitely check out Telerik RAD, R-A-D, Control Suite, the UI essentials for rapid ASP.NET development, online at www.telerik.com, Telerik.com. They're a new sponsor, and we've taken their tools for a test drive here, and we like what we see. This indispensable collection of components cover the major aspects of most web applications, from the CMS backbone and the WYSIWYG editor to navigation, content rotation, and charting. Telerik has just released version Q1 2005 of the RAD Control Suite, which features new major versions of their tree view, panel bar, and charting components. The company has been prominent for frequent releases, so you can expect something new every month. RAD Controls is not merely a collection of ordinary controls, but rather a value set of products, many of which are market leaders in their respective categories. They've received a number of industry awards and recognitions. Moreover, as of June 2004, a modified version of their flagship control, the HTML content editor called RAD Editor, has been made available by Microsoft as a replacement of the default HTML placeholder in Microsoft Content Management Server 2002. All the individual controls can also be purchased separately. If you only need navigation components, for example, you can opt in for the subset called RAD Navigation Suite. A subscription option is also available, which entitles you to new products and free updates for 1 year. So you should definitely check them out. Telerik RAD Control Suite Q1 2005 for ASP.NET at www.telerik.com.
You know, getting back on a technical track rather than the philosophy of .NET, I've been playing around with this program, and I'm zooming in and I'm zooming out. And, you know, I've been wondering, how are you handling things like MIP mapping? Is that something you're just letting DirectX do as people are zooming in and out of this? Or
MIP mapping?
Yeah, MIP mapping, which is, I guess, the selection of textures and changing the sub-rendering of pixels in the textures depending on how close you are to the texture and stuff like that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, actually, Whirlwind kind of uses an implicit way of doing MIP mapping, where the actual textures that get loaded don't actually have any MIP maps, but there are several levels of kind of textures where, we call them tiles. So if you're looking really far out, where you have the whole globe in view, you have about let's just say you have like 50 tiles that are loaded right there at a particular resolution. So when you start zooming in, we use the term level of detail. Higher resolution tiles get loaded for the particular view that you're looking at. So if you start zooming down into the United States, more images, more tiles will get loaded that are actually better images, better tiles, better resolution tiles for just the United States. And then if you start zooming in even closer to, say, California, more tiles will get loaded that are better resolution just for California. And it's kind of like a recursiveness where you just keep getting, as you get closer to the surface of the Earth, higher resolution tiles will start loading. And that way, it's a way of handling lots of data without actually having to render like the entire world at 1 meter per pixel at this all at once.
All right, so I've got a question. As we're going down through all this data, I can see, I'm looking right here, I'm zoomed out and I'm looking at USGS. I'm looking at Blue Marble data. But as I zoom in, it looks like I'm hitting USGS data. How are you handling matching stuff like, well, besides, the obvious matching edges and making sure everything's in the right spot, how are you handling things like colors and all of that kind of stuff? Because all these things look, the source material must look very different. It's all coming from different satellites and aerial and...
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't actually do much to the colors themselves. So if we're downloading some images from TerraServer, what you see in Whirlwind is basically what gets transferred over the wire. And if TerraServer actually has a website that you can go to, and they have their own web interface for all their data. So if you look at their web interface and you look at Whirlwind, it would be basically the same thing. But in the future, we're kind of thinking, maybe we could start playing with maybe colors. Say we go to some website and they give us imagery that's kind of like digital values of the actual scientific data. I guess Whirlwind could technically convert those digital values into certain colors or maybe exaggerate or enhance certain things depending on the user's interest.
Yeah. So Another quick question: how much work do you have to spend actually mapping this stuff to the sphere? Is that that's pretty? Seems like it should be pretty straightforward math until you start doing stuff like you're rendering, the topographics and stuff like that. How much work do you have to do to get this data in the right spots? After you pull down just the raw image.
Geoff, I'm really glad you're on the show, man.
Oh,
these are great questions, and I wouldn't have thought of them.
That's actually one of the simpler things in Whirlwind. It's basically just applying a mathematical model to your rectangular image based on the bounding box of that image. So each corner will have like a lat long, and so you would just apply like a kind of a rectangular grid onto that image, and then through just a simple formula, it gets those kind of grid points get transformed into this spherical mesh.
Huh.
I think you see that in the MODIS option, where you're taking a particular satellite scan of a particular thing, an algae bloom or a fire or whatever else, and just laying it right over the Landsat data so that it merges perfectly. All the coastlines line up and so forth, but it's a totally different kind of image.
Let me ask you this: what did you use any kind of modeling tool for the object hierarchy, like any kind of UML tools, rational maybe, or what kind of architectural tools did you use?
The only tool that we use is Visual Studio, and that kind of brings another subject. And that there's like basically no documentation for any of the technical details of Whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I guess the way it's constructed and the way C#.net and DirectX are kind of pretty easy to follow and read, at least the way the code's structured and everything.
Right.
The developers really haven't had any real trouble understanding how it works. For the most part, they can just dive right in and start contributing.
So you started with a whiteboard, basically?
Yeah, kind of.
Wow. And do you use data sets, or did you write your own objects for data containers, or how do you pass data around?
Well, I try to keep it as simple as possible. It's a lot of files. I try to keep data inside files, and
okay. So do you have classes that wrap those files and get the data out as needed, or?
There's a few classes that will wrap a file, but basically we just try to keep everything really simple. Right. I don't really know how to do anything really complicated.
No, you know what though? Look at this. This is beautiful. This is beautiful stuff. You should be really proud of yourself, man.
Now, you said you were in school for 6 years, working on this 2 years, so you're what, 26? 27?
Almost 26. Give me a few more months.
Wow. NASA's lucky to have you, man. Like, this is very talented thought in your code.
I think the .NET community is lucky to have him, and I think maybe like a keynote appearance at Dev Connections or something might
definitely.
Because I think that the community at large is really, really interested in real projects like this that do amazing things. Well,
and this is just not another business accounting piece of software. It's something totally different.
Yep, and that's right. Most of us out here are writing CRUD programs, accessing data, putting it in a grid, editing, save it. Boring shit.
Well, it's been really fun to write this program, and I guess it makes my work ethic better. Sometimes I go home and I just keep coding just because I want to see what will happen next. What else can I throw in here that would be really cool to see, and then I come and show Randy the next day. He's like, "Oh my God, what did you do?" And
it doesn't look like what it used to look like the other day. And
yeah,
I'm quite amazed that you're able to wrap these things around the sphere.
True,
like the continents wrap perfectly. There must be some incredible math involved in that.
Well, it's actually not as complex as you think. I guess the biggest trick is just making sure that the images that we do use conform to a certain mapping standard, a GIS mapping standard. There's
sense.
Dozens of mapping standards out there, and you have to kind of just, at least if you're using one mathematical model, you have to make sure that all your images fit that mathematical model.
Yeah.
So there's sort of a test for every new set of data you want to bring in that it's going to comply with these things.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we have to kind of be kind of selective about what we pick. But at the same time, the mathematical model that we use, there's nothing that says somebody else can't come along and apply a new mathematical model for a different mapping projection.
I got a question for you. So, and I don't know who's going to answer this, but now there are animations that you can do for these historical things that have been significant. Is the MODIS thing that sophisticated that you can sort of watch weather in a quasi-real time?
Actually, that brings up another thing. About a couple months ago, I was toying around with real-time weather, and I found this place, the Naval Research Labs, and I kind of was poking around that website, and I noticed that they have real-time weather updated every 15 minutes. So I guess I spent 2 days just kind of trying to get that data, that connectivity into Whirlwind, just to see, I want to see what real-time weather looks like. And I think that might be buried somewhere in version 1.2e or 1.2d, just as kind of like a hidden secret on one of the keys. But
wow.
It's actually kind of in there. And we've been talking to those guys to kind of make it an official add-on, but they just kind of got sidetracked on a couple of...
Now, is that going to be weather text or weather satellite imagery or radar?
It's weather, satellite imagery, radar. It's real imagery, colors, and you see the clouds are moving.
Oh, wow.
You can see the rain amounts. Just like what you would see on the Weather Channel or anything like that.
That'd be nice to have that would be set this application as have it running in the background behind everything else. Make all your other windows a little transparent, and just have the world weather in the background.
There all the time with the day-night band running across.
Yeah,
all that good stuff.
I've got a wishy-washy sort of question for you. As I've been poking through some of the SVS stuff that NASA's been providing. I was looking through the biosphere section. I'm looking at the Rondonia deforestation, and it's depressing. Do you ever find that looking at some of the kind of negative impacts that humans can visibly have in this program, it really presents it in a different way? Do you find that that's been helpful to help show people, when we cut down forests, it's really noticeable, and our cities really are this sprawling, and you can see the effects of pollution. Do you see Whirlwind as being used as like an educational tool to try to promote environmentalism? And also, do you get depressed when you look at this stuff?
I'm familiar with that one because sometimes people point those scenes out to me. For example, one thing I didn't notice before when I was looking at a pseudo-color satellite image set, which brings out the vegetation.
Yeah.
One person was pointed out to me that over Yellowstone, they have that pretty rectangular border around the park itself.
Yeah.
But if you were to look just to the left of that, you'll notice that I guess the forest cover is pretty patchy over there. You can come up with your own conclusions, I guess, with what's going on down there just by looking at the image. It's pretty compelling.
How about crop circles? Do you have like a crop circle database?
I haven't seen any crop circles, though.
I actually found one on Keyhole. I was talking about this on the Mondays the other day, but I found one in England on Keyhole. It was definitely a crop circle. Wherever it came from, I don't know.
Something that got caught in an aerial photo or something.
But it got caught in an aerial photo. It was kind of funny.
As I'm plugging around through various data sources here, I'm noticing some of these data sources are down. Do you guys have an antagonistic relationship with any of the people that you're pulling this data off of? Because this must be a pretty popular program. There's a lot of data getting sucked off of a lot of servers. How are you guys dealing with that politically?
Well, let's see. A lot of the traffic that has occurred lately has been a certain strain on a lot of our servers, not just for the data side of things, but also just to grab the original client.
Yeah.
Because it's so large to begin with.
Yeah, I use BitTorrent.
Some people have really actually run together, try to scrounge up whatever they can. We have one person who's managing the open source software site over at Ames Research Center. He went out of his way to actually scrounge up some old machines just to find enough machines to get enough mirrors out there so people can actually download the program when this project actually started taking off.
And I bet the federal government isn't handing out dough for bandwidth.
No, they really actually want us to be self-sustaining. So if we say we want to deliver the entire Landsat globe, and we expect to have like several hundred gigabytes of throughput per day, they just kind of really frown on that. So one of the biggest things we had to do is to try to go out to other private companies and try to get them interested in hosting this data.
I have an idea for you to make some money. So you're zooming in, you're looking at Chicago, and all of a sudden this big Pepsi can just pops right out.
Yeah,
at
that's
you.
a great idea, Carl. Yeah, well, wait me to come over into the studio there and smack you upside the head.
Better yet, you could like subliminal messages in here. So all of a sudden, I'm watching the Gobi Desert and I'm getting really thirsty, and it's Pepsi that I want, not anything else.
All right, so you guys are talking about data stuff, and I was actually chatting about this earlier in your IRC channel. Plug to the IRC channel. You can probably find a link to it on their website, but it's what is it? It's Pound Whirlwind on Freenode, irc.freenode.net. It seems like there are all these people running this application. There's all this data that needs to get moved around. It seems like this would be a prime candidate for distributed data sharing. Like why why are you guys using a standard downloading system? Why, for example, aren't you wrapping, like a modified version of the BitTorrent protocol, wrapping your program around a modified version of the BitTorrent protocol or something like that, or some other,
And feel free to answer just because there aren't enough hours in the day because,
Actually, when we first got Slashdotted, that was back in late September. Our primary Landsat download server went down due to the tremendous traffic from all the Slashdotters.
Oh yeah.
So one of the things that they just kept asking for BitTorrent. One of the problems here at NASA though is we can't use BitTorrent for security reasons. So it's not like I can just develop for it. But we did have another open source developer make a BitTorrent patch or something. He did take Whirlwind and he integrated BitTorrent into it. But I guess the biggest issue with BitTorrent and those kinds of peer-to-peer sharing mechanisms is just that Whirlwind uses a large amount of small files. And when I say large amount, there's potentially millions of files. Well, there are millions of files that go into a lot of these data sets. And it's just the overhead for each file that needs to be downloaded through a peer-to-peer sharing it's probably more than the file itself.
So what you need is lots and lots of servers all over the world and then go round robin, get as many, get them from each server in series, right?
Yeah.
Either that or an insanely intelligent peer-to-peer networking system which doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Maybe the next generation.
Yeah. Well, here's a question. Cool. You're talking about a lot of small files. So each one of these, I guess, one of these tiles that I'm looking at each one of these tiles is an individual file, or how does the tile system work? Like obviously the Blue Marble set. Well, that's included in the program, right? The Blue Marble set. Yeah. But for example, the JPL, Global Landsat, Mosaic, Visible Bands, Pan-Shaped. There's more than one level of that, and there are multiple files for each individual area. So it wouldn't make sense to do an entire layer as one giant shared file because that would just be enormous, right? I mean, what kind of file sizes are you talking about for the whole zoomed in thing everywhere?
Well, let's say you wanted to just download the entire Landsat Mosaic.
Okay.
That would probably be on the order of a few terabytes.
Oh, nice.
Very nice.
And I think TerraServer, they're serving up around 20 terabytes of images.
Geez, you could actually blow my file server out of the water.
Gosh.
I thought I was doing well with 2.
What if somebody's listening and has bandwidth that they want to contribute?
Which is a strong possibility.
Yeah. How can they do that? Who should they get a hold of?
I could answer this one. That actually already has happened. Some people has already come forward and actually donated their time, their development, and the bandwidth to actually host Whirlwind and its data. And just to give some props out to them, I'd like to thank the open source community. For example, we have a site called worldwindcentral.com, and then they have been very generous in providing all of these resources for us. Because we're just a new project. We're still getting off the ground.
Oh, this is great.
Hey, well, how long has it been since you guys went open source and put it into SourceForge?
It was an open source project to begin with. When did the open source thing happen, Chris?
That happened maybe a month after the Slashdot. So that'd be maybe October.
Yeah, Slashdot will make you want to go to somebody else's servers.
Yeah, please help us.
Yeah.
What are some of the things we can expect in the next version?
The next version that should be due out any day will have pretty much a brand new interface.
Really?
We've tried to merge most of at least the core interface elements into the DirectX window and tried to ditch a lot of the Windows Forms elements just because you can do so much more with the DirectX window than you can with, and be much more dynamic and interactive, much more like a game.
Okay.
And, one of our core audiences is kids, and we want to make this program very interactive and very inviting for the user. So
right.
Expect just that, the interface will be much more animated and lively and they're looking.
Does Flash play a part in this at all? Anywhere?
No, not. I don't know how to use it, but maybe one day we can figure something out. But it's not used right now.
Yeah.
So I've got a sort of another philosophical-ish question for you. I guess you're trying to appeal to a pretty wide audience, but there's a huge amount of data that's available in this application and a lot of layers you can turn on and off. How are you guys, going about making decisions as to what's visible on the front of the, what's visible at first glance in this program, how much stuff you have to dig for? How are you balancing, depth of options and usability?
Well, right now, let's see. How can I answer this one?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You can choose not to answer that.
No problem. With Whirlwind, at first, when we were starting developing of the program, we really didn't have that many features to begin with. And every time we came up with one or a new data set, we'll just throw an icon. And slowly, we've been filling up the horizontal side of the screen. So now we're trying to think, okay, where are we going to put all this stuff? Other than the usual, we tried making our own interface. I guess not using the Windows GUI itself, but internal to the program so it can scale. And so depending on their resolution, it looks consistent, depending on what size of the screen that they've got. Or we're still playing around with different strategies.
I think another strategy that we might try to lean towards is kind of being adapted to what person's looking at. So let's say that a lot of the data sets are kind of local to an area. So like the USGS stuff is only local to the United States. If you're looking at Africa, there's no reason for you to see that there's any USGS stuff available. And making the interface kind of adaptive to what people are looking at would probably be the next step to kind of...
The buttons would disable themselves as you move into an area where there's no data.
Or maybe just disappear entirely, and maybe new buttons would come up.
Oh.
So
wow.
Just something like that might happen.
Somebody told us by email that they were developing a planets plugin for planets. So obviously your engine here works for planetoids, and does that mean we could look at the moon or Mars or Jupiter with this thing someday?
One of our developers, open source developers, actually already has a Mars patch.
Really?
It's basically he's been working on getting the Mars textures and best imagery of Mars you can get and throwing them inside a Whirlwind.
In the future, we'll be able to talk to the people, the original Mars team, and hopefully, as we show off the program and so on, we'll be able to grab their original information and import it into Whirlwind. And we're really looking forward to that one.
There's going to be some tricky math because the planets are different sizes, scaling the longitude and latitude to a different surface like that.
Hey, that brings me, I guess there's lots and lots and lots of little departments all over NASA, and this is just but one project that's going on. Do you notice any other .NET projects happening at NASA? Do you know of any?
I haven't really found any substantial ones. There was another group at our center at Ames that was doing something with the space station using managed DirectX and C#.
Wow.
They were trying to visualize the space station, but other than that, I haven't seen anything.
Yeah. But then again, you've probably got blinders on in terms of just working on your project now.
Well, it's also kind of hard to know what other groups in NASA are doing. I mean, it's like if we want to get the best Mars imagery available, it's not exactly straightforward to find the people responsible for that.
Hey, Chris, were you interested in astronomy in college, or is this something that you went to work for NASA and you just fell into it?
Oh no, I like astronomy. I've been kind of in science. I watch the Discovery Channel all the time.
Sure.
It's.
But in terms of study,
except for that one astronomy class, no, not particularly.
Yeah.
So what the heck are you doing with NASA, man? Oh, what's going on here? What's a scam?
Randy, you can answer that one.
Me?
Why am I here?
It's a similar situation, but one thing to consider is NASA, everyone thinks, we're launching shuttles into space or rockets and so on.
Right.
But it covers a whole lot more than that, more into different fields of science such as nanotechnology. You got astrobiologists, and every field, including computers, which actually drew me into this project. It could be any of your interests. We're looking for everyone.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I got a comment. It says, I'm a Canadian. I'm very pro McDonald Detweiler, and they put together radar sat, but I don't see any radar sat data here.
Well, if you tell us where to find it, we'll put it in there.
That's a fine question, isn't it? It was a mission on the shuttle that put a big boom out and scanned the planet in detail using radar.
Ooh, that sounds cool. Yeah,
that would be an
send them that
interesting
link.
set of
I want it in the program now.
We do have at our office. Somebody gave us the radar sat for Antarctica, and it looks amazing. But it's in a different kind of projection.
So you have to
we
use
just haven't gotten around to kind of converting it to what we need to use it for. It's not exactly straightforward. So.
No, because I think their imagery was in very narrow bands, so it'd be challenging to assemble all that.
Yeah.
Well, you'll never guess what I was just doing. In fact, I'm doing right now. I'm looking at a fleet of boats coming in and out of the Panama Canal.
Ooh, where's that?
That's in Panama, you moron.
Well, yeah, but I mean...
Where's that?
Is it an animation, or are you just looking at...
I'm just zoomed in.
Oh, okay. I thought you had an animation of
By the way,
boats.
I totally retract that. Jeff is not a moron. In fact, he's the anti-moron. In fact, if you've been listening to the show, he's putting all the us other morons to shame.
Yeah, you guys suck. I asked the hard
No, but
questions.
I'm serious. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 or 9 ships, and they look huge. Coming in or out of, I don't know which way they're going. Looks like they're going out of south, the Panama Canal, which is really cool. I've just never seen it. I mean, how often do you get to look down on the Panama Canal, It's awesome.
Now, there's one other technology they mentioned in the chat room that I don't know about. Maybe you guys can explain it to me, called hotspots.
Yeah, there's a website, www.whirlwindcentral.com.
Yeah.
And what Whirlwind users can do is they can, when they find stuff inside of Whirlwind, they can save a URL. Whirlwind has its own URL protocol, so they can save that and post it onto that website, and then other users can find out, they can go to that website and see what other people have put up there. And then, they can click the link to open up Whirlwind and take you right there to what they're looking at. And then the guy there has also categorized all that stuff in different categories. So I think one of them is celebrity homes, and then you can find Bill Gates' house.
Oh, cool.
I've seen it. It's large.
Yeah, it is large. And there's a guy on the dock who's staring at you when you go by.
Every time.
That's his job.
You can't stop out front of Bill's place.
Is there? Let me ask you this, Chris. Now you're talking to some people experienced with .NET and plugged in at Microsoft. Is there anything that we can do for you?
Not exactly sure.
Do you have a good relationship with Microsoft in terms of tech support and or what have you?
Well, we just recently had a issue with the February 2005 release of the DirectX SDK and managed DirectX. And so we shot off an email to one of the the .NET people who's been kind of helping us just a little bit, kind of in the sidelines.
Yep.
And they got us the response within a day, so I've been pretty impressed with what they've been doing.
That's the way it ought to be.
That's great. And, yeah.
I feel stupid. I can't find the canal. I can find Panama, but...
Well, I'm looking at the canal there, Geoff. What's wrong with you?
So it actually says Panama, if you turn places on.
No, I've got place names on.
If you got place names on, look for Panama.
Well, I know where Panama is.
And you got to zoom into the north. I
think I got it. Yeah,
to the northwest side. Yeah.
Well, Carl.
Cologne. Yeah. What a great show, guys! I can't tell you how much a thrill this has been for me. And look, I mean, we've got some guys in the chat room who are just blown away. So. Thank you.
Yeah, they want to know when you're going to leave NASA and go work for a gaming company.
That would be fun.
Yeah, it's an interesting business.
Yeah. Well, any last-minute words of wisdom you want to impart? Calls to action? I mean, not calls to action. That's crazy, but
well,
maybe not. Anything you want to plug or talk about before we hang up?
Well, just. If for everyone that's downloaded version 1.2e, we expect to have version 1.3, which is our next big release, available anytime, probably by Monday. So I would encourage everybody to download that and try it and down at it.
And I can't wait for some sort of plug-in interface so we could possibly get our hooks in there, easily.
That's on the back burner. It's only a matter of time.
Excellent. Listen, guys, I want to thank you very much, Chris Maxwell, Randy Kim from NASA, and on behalf of myself and Geoff Maciolik, who did the lion's share of the question asking tonight, and Richard Campbell out there in Vancouver, all the fans everywhere, our friends at Microsoft, thanks a lot for listening to .NET Rocks. We'll be back next week. Be good. Do good things, Thanks again, guys. We'll see ya.
Life is hard.